good evening, depending on which time zone you are in this point in time. Welcome to the Consider Solutions webinar around the topic of master data governance in relationship to finance excellence. The topic will be presented by me, Hans van Ness, COO for Consider Solutions. I will be guiding you through this webinar and will be answering your questions if it were possible. Questions you can fill in the panel on your screen, and we will try to answer them as far as time is allowing. Might we have more questions than time left, I will answer them by mail. The agenda for today is, after a very short introduction about Consider Solutions, focused on master data governance and the role in world-class finance, how it can help there, what challenges we see, what the relationship with continuous monitoring is, some special words about master data governance for global process owners, things to consider, key lessons, and then the questions that you submit. Very briefly, for those who don't know us, we are an organization that delivers solutions for world-class finance. We do that in the areas of finance control and compliance, risk assurance, and finance process optimization, in a combination of delivering business consulting services, project services, technology, and turnkey solutions. All with the aim to help organizations to achieve world-class finance, resulting in better business results, lower cost of finance, a better cash flow, and a managed risk environment. We do this for almost 15 years now for a lot of customers throughout the world. Some of the probably household logos and names you see on this slide. So far about us. If you want to know more, please look at our website. As an introduction, world-class finance, we have been working with a lot of organizations to get better results in that area, and we structure this in what we call the three lenses of insight. If you look at world-class finance, you need to take a look at and pay attention to elements like financial control and compliance. If you are a stock market listed organization, maybe for SOX, but in general you have to look at your data governance. You have more and more to apply self-control, control self-assessment. In that area of control and compliance, a lot of the initiatives that we have seen in automating that have started, but more and more you see that there is a move in attention to the other two pillars of world-class finance, and that is looking and monitoring for risk assurance in order to detect fraud, error, bribery, and corruption. And last but not least, by doing that, you look also at optimizing your finance processes. You are looking for waste, and you do that by driving simplification and standardization, and in that way, in the end, hopefully optimizing your cash flow. So these monitors, these three lenses of insight, as we call them, we will come back to later to see how master data governance and continuous monitoring both contribute to this optimizing your world-class finance. So we have seen that in the previous slide that a few elements in world-class finance are revolving around standardization and data governance. They are really the pillars or the foundation for world-class finance. If you look at master data governance, it is focusing on master data standardization. So you could say different catalysts, but with common objectives and often joint forces, as we will see. They will really complement each other. We have named this webinar Master Data Governance, using that as the central theme. There's a lot of confusion about terminology in this area. A lot of times there's talk about master data management, but we think that is too limited. That is often talking about the technology or the solutions to master to manage your master data. But there's more involved. There is an environment, there is a context, and we think master data governance is the better generic umbrella for that. But even if you go into master data governance, you will see many definitions around. I have collected 3 here that don't contradict, but emphasize different elements in master data governance. The one I like most is the bottom one from the MDM Institute, what is in the name in this case. And it says it's the formal orchestration of people, process, and technology, to enable an organization to leverage on data as an enterprise asset. And that says it all. Why is it so important to talk about master data governance, and what will happen if you don't apply it? Well, I have collected 3 maybe known examples to you, just to give you a few indications. We begin at the left as an example of a fraud situation where the same person over and over via more than 1,600 aliases bought music CDs with very high discounts for first users. You know the situation. The first CD you buy is 99 cents and the next one is $7 or $8 or euros or pounds. So he misused that, and you could say the problem here is that the notion of the duplicates that are available in an organization, in this case a duplicate customer without being noticed, was a problem that led to lost revenue. The second example is a credit card user who was moving house, giving his new address to the organization, but still got called up by the billing department asking why the bill was not being paid, threatening letters, and you know how it goes. Although both involved units, business units in that credit card company had changed the billing address, what they were lacking was the notion of the one source of the truth in this case. So the truth about the customer and the definition of it, and having all the information for that customer from every angle and from every stakeholder aligned. Not surprisingly, this case led to the loss of a customer for life, because if you are maltreated that way, you don't want to stay on board as a customer. And last but not least, from a completely different, other different area, an example how lacking standardization can lead to a loss of a spacecraft in this case, because the software failed that the conversion found out that the conversion from a English measure to a Newton-based measure didn't work out, so the rocket fired inappropriately and the aircraft was lost, the spacecraft was lost. So you can see that from various angles, duplicates, single source of the truth, and lack of standardization can lead to loss of money, loss of revenue, extra costs, or loss of customers. What are we talking about when we talk about master data governance? It is the challenge of managing the assets of a business. Some people call it the golden business objects. And most people think then about customers, suppliers, and employees, and probably also about the products and the services and the other company assets that are needed to run a business. Often forgotten is the fact that also organizations, parties, and reference data are part of those assets and have to be governed. The percentages that you see there are from a survey that gives on average an idea in the vast amount of data that you have, which percentage relates to these golden business objects. And all these objects have in common that they are touched by multiple domains. the business stakeholders, the enterprise applications that are a world in itself, and information technology trying to glue everything together and automate it. And the problem that you see there, or the schism that you see there, that all these objects in a domain have specific functionality. So for one domain, the functionality can be quite different from another domain that is using the same object, resulting in a lack of consistency and standards, of course. All those objects have also their own rules, use of language, which leads to lack of cross-functional governance and collaboration. And even the understanding of the data attributes can be very different and individual. And there can be incorrect stuff, incomplete stuff, but what you also see is just the fact that data attributes are misused for certain processes, only relevant to a single domain and confusing another domain. And it's getting more and more complex because you see the multi-tenant supply and demand chains making things more complex, so more stakeholders, more ERPs involved. The system landscapes itself become more complex, and by having more and more cloud on-premise combinations of ERPs and supporting systems, the chances are that object definitions grow apart even more. And you know how it goes. If you see that your object is used in your domain in the right way and somebody else in another domain and doesn't understand it or uses it differently, you go in the fight that data quality is always someone else's responsibility. The challenges that you encounter around master data governance are self-propelling, symbolized by this little graph here. If your data quality is poor, it will result in poor data classification. You will miss the single source of truth. In that way, duplicate data will be there and will be growing, which leads to more consistency issues, which leads to even poorer data quality issues. So, and they all lead to an adverse business decision making. So you have to break this continuous loop of getting worse. Also, it is not only the direct data-related downstream effect which is important, it is also the wider business impact. If you have master data governance-related challenges, you will see the obvious things like runaway cost and missed revenue in the examples that I presented earlier. But you will also see that keeping your underlying existing technology up to par with it becomes more and more expensive because you have to take all kinds of transforming measures that were not necessary if you would have organized and governed your data in a better way. And last but not least, if you're in the business of mergers and acquisitions, you will find out that merging an acquired entity into your organization or merging with somebody else becomes more and more difficult if you have to explain that a certain object can mean many things in many different subdomains. What activities and what elements do you address in master data governance? I personally like the Gartner building blocks, but I have to say they have named them a bit wrongly because I think they should have been called master data governance building blocks, but we will forgive Gartner in this case. You see that it starts with a vision and it ends with the technology infrastructure. And I think there a lot of things go wrong because most organizations just implement the technology, forgetting the reason why they are doing it and forgetting the organization to make it happen. If you read in detail through these Gartner building blocks and what they do, there is one central theme or one central line you can find there, and that is called harmonization. Harmonizing your data starts with profiling what you have, cleansing, and then managing it. Again, there are many variants in the models and the steps in those models and what they do exactly. I think the one I depicted here is a common denominator of the things that you will see there. And again, watch out that solution vendors who deliver MDM solutions have also their own definitions. But profile, cleanse, and manage are the three elements that deliver the harmonized data that you can work further upon. And by doing that harmonization, you will create downstream results. So from a business perspective, when you standardize, you drive continuous improvement in your processes. That means that you get your consistent and actionable information, and you will eliminate duplicate data. You could call that the strategic effort or the strategic intent. Financially, or let's call that tactically, you will see improved spend and supply results, etc., etc. And at the bottom of the stream, operationally or technically, you will see an improvement in your ERP implementation quality, more effective interfacing, and lower costs by central management and maintenance options. So downstream effects are the result of this harmonization. And a lot of organizations have started with it or have embarked on proof of concepts or even have rolled out massive MDM projects. So they all had the good intention to harmonize, and with that they created a lot of standardization. They created a single source of the truth, and they removed duplicates. But the weird thing is that we see a lot of surveys with results like this. This is one from Data Consulting UK, a very recent one. A lot of the driving factors behind these very high percentages are related to the fact that keeping clean after getting clean is far more difficult than most organizations realize or have planned for. So let's go back to Gartner, because if I have the statement there is not enough governance around your cleansed data, then we have to define what governance is. Well, you know, Gartner has long sentences to explain stuff. I have highlighted in italic the most important things. Rights and an accountability framework. I think that is very important that you said that around your data. It should be effective and efficient in use, so not a lot of overheads with non-results or theoretical results, but really practical results. And it needs an organization structure. People from different parts of the organization or outside the organization with different levels of seniority to make things happen. So with this in mind, if we revisit what happens in the master data governance world, which challenges are there, and we revisit those, we have to say that if you do master data governance and you have done your harmonization and your standardization, and you implement that in structures in the organization, is just a set of controls. I should say another set of controls. And we all know that controls can be circumvented on purpose or inadvertently or because the system allows it or whatever. And what we conclude is that master data governance often is implemented about just harmonizing your data objects and not the business process. And if the business process allows for deferring from just harmonized data, you're back to square one. Another thing is that, and I indicated that before, master data governance is often implemented as a stovepipe, between brackets IT solution, triggered by the possibilities and the functionality of the chosen technical solution, which is good because it is a standardization in itself, but it is bad because if the organization around it is not equipped to manage the results, then you lose money that you invest in it. The other thing is that we observe that it's often isolated from wider governance, risk and compliance functions in the business, which can lead to doing things a bit double or unaware of each other, and we come back to that later. And as always with complex elements like this, the drivership to do something with what you find and take the consequences of not acting, being additional risk or loss of revenue, it is difficult. There's so many people involved. Who is the owner, who can address, and who has the capability to act upon things that you find. Reality is stubborn, far more stubborn than we think when we design our normalized and harmonized data structures. You will see erosion when you don't manage them. And I give you some examples of the erosion of what you have done and what you have invested. Take the example of duplicates. There can be so many duplicates around in an organization, and vendors, customers, purchase orders, payments. They can be just to circumvent processes, or because there is a lot of operational freedom to change from your master data. If you take your master data as your desired single source of truth, you can set master data attributes in your systems, but if operational processes allow to differ from that, you have to make sure that you don't create a duplicate again or a second truth in your organization. And let's be honest, we can't close everything down. Doing business means the reality of differing sometimes from the set standard. But if you do that, it should be done in a controlled way, in a managed way, and a documented way. And last but not least, and I think sometimes this is too often forgotten in master data governance related project, is that we're building our own history day by day. And by having a dormant vendor in our system, that vendor, although nicely structured, harmonized, and not duplicated, can be a source of fraudulent activities. The same with retired or left employees. Yeah, it can be a scope for fraud. Things like this means that we need to make sure that we apply the appropriate governance on these elements so that they don't happen, or if they happen, that we are aware of them and they don't give us a headache. So how do we get this governance on top of the harmonization activities that we have applied? Well, let's take again the duplicates that we find. You remove them. We have already discussed that they will be created again in daily business because the systems allow it. Yeah, ERPs allow it. A typo can allow it. A different address can allow it without it being noticed. And what we discover is that the majority of those things happen because of system flaws, ignorance, and error. And of course, there is always some fraud there, but luckily, that's not the biggest percentage. It's the reality of doing business. So if you create a single source of truth top-down and you know it can be bypassed bottom-up, the only way you can do it is to monitor for exceptions. And if you think about monitoring for exceptions, that is what continuous monitoring also does. Sometimes another type of exceptions. And I tried to compare master data governance and continuous monitoring here. And you see, if you read through the table, that they are not overlapping, but they are complementary to each other. So harmonized data versus harmonized business process execution. Yeah, and in the driving section, the expected behavior against the factual adherence. Yeah, so continuous monitoring takes the standards set by master data governance and looks upon them on how well they are executed in real life. In continuous monitoring, we have been using, as I said in one of my early slides, the notion of the three lenses that we look through to make sure that we support world-class finance with continuous monitoring. But we can easily apply the same to the world of master data governance. We have multiple stakeholders, complex business processes in the middle, and multiple applications where the data is stored and modified. Using the well-known 4 levels of continuous controls monitoring in there, again defined by Gartner, you see that there is both a technical element in there, configuration of systems and processes, yeah, and access to applications. But on the top 2 levels, you see the master data as the underlying single source of the truth that should be used in transactions, and then the transactions themselves, what did people do with it? And we summarize that by saying there is a can do, the bottom 2, and a did do set of tasks to be applied. And you do that through 3 lenses, because you have to do it for financial control and compliance reasons, but at the same time it can be from a risk or internal audit angle, or it can be from a finance process optimization angle. Typically what you will find is that you monitor for exceptions with the trigger any one of these lenses, that the found exception plays a role in one or more other lenses. So don't look upon it as a stovepipe, but look upon it as 3 lenses that you interchange based on what you want to find. And bringing it back to the master data governance level, we're not looking here only for data objects, but we're looking for business process and data object. So the data object as the business asset, and the process as the way those assets are used or sometimes misused. So a little summary first. Master data governance is a crucial part to achieve world-class finance. Everybody will admit that. When you run master data governance in isolation from operational reality, the investment will erode and the quality will get poorer. If you combine continuous monitoring for risk and compliance together with master data governance, you will make sure that misuse of master data is found, the exceptions, and together they will set the standard and enforce and adjust the way that the master data is used, and will make sure that you get from a get clean to a stay clean situation. And that gives you the possibility to say data quality is everybody's responsibility, because setting it as standard and a single source of the truth, and then monitoring that everybody is adhering to that, make sure that everybody that is not doing that will be pointed toward the misuse or the bad use, and everybody in that sense is involved with data quality for the total organization. Master data governance and continuous monitoring are both examples of analytics, and we all know that analytics is a hot theme in many blogs, in many books, and probably in many boardrooms. But analytics is a very wide thing, a very wide theme. And I think when you talk about master data governance and continuous monitoring and what they can bring to your organization, you should be very clear on what your objectives are and manage their expectations. And not implement it as yet another set of super controls or big brother, but show the people that there is genuine business impact if you handle it well, and there's genuine business impact if you don't pay attention to it. And be aware that if you do that, you will quickly align with senior management on their personal KPIs, because a lot of the things that we have discussed in master data governance and continuous monitoring will directly contribute to bottom line things which are measured in the main KPIs for many of our senior managers. And let's not make the mistake that we take a 3-year program to get this running. In 3 years, too many things can happen. Quick results and quick wins are critical, and make sure that you continue to deliver value to the organization, so that you will keep the attention of the management and you will keep the budget to further streamline your implementations. Some separate words about master data governance and continuous monitoring for global processes. More and more we see in organizations that there are global process structures defined either for things like P2P or financial services or whatever. In fact, you could call them mini companies that often have a different set of stakeholders than the original company. It's more internal stakeholders that you see that they deal with. It is becoming more and more a common way to organize your business. And governance is very critical to the global process owner's mission, because a global process owner mission is essentially structuring a relationship with the stakeholders and aligning processes and making sure that things are reported, transparent and to the point. And in the above survey from Booz Allen Hamilton, you can see how a global process owner spends his or her time percentage-wise. There are slight differences in various industries, but from the survey it is stated that these are good averages to look at. And if you look then into detail what happens in those responsibilities, and we count the percentages together, you can see that governance plays a role in 70% of a global process owner's time, and that applying good master data governance and continuous monitoring are mandatory instruments to a global process owner, because it gets them to the state of get clean. With continuous monitoring, we have seen to stay clean because you detect anomalies, and together they will form the foundation for your continuous improvement cycles that you need as a global process owner, and that is to get better. An important thing of getting this implemented, master data governance and continuous monitoring, is defining an effective framework to drive all the actions involved. We have developed a methodology for this, which helps you to work together with your process owner, which gives you the basis for your qualitative and quantitative management, and will make sure that these are so necessary alignment with KPIs and the various types of reporting are there. By applying a methodology like this, you create this framework for success, because you will, together with your internal and external stakeholders, get this successful framework, which covers the items listed on this slide. By using a structured approach like this, it is not becoming a technical solution only, or a police organization type of implementation only. It is really trying to balance what is needed from internal and external stakeholders, how it relates to process quality, how continuous improvement loops are structured, etc. There are also some lessons learned, and I must say some of these lessons are so obvious that you probably would say, why do you present them? Well, obvious but so often forgotten. You can go all the way and very wide in your implementation, but you also can focus first on the most important thing. If the data around your purchase to pay gives you the most headaches, start with that, and don't try to do it data throughout the organization. If you think that your vendors are your problem, start there. Yeah. So find the business significant elements first, and especially make sure that you have it implemented end-to-end with a good supporting organization before you widen the stuff. Locking the windows and the door is very a very obvious remark, but we see in many cases that a lot of money is spent in restructuring stuff whereby the back door is open and the data inconsistency is flowing out of the window, if that is a good way to pronounce it. And make sure that your process owners and stakeholders are either owning or involving, depending on their role, elements around master data governance and continuous monitoring. Ownership is crucial. I think that is true for a lot of good initiatives, but and often the ownership is taken, but then downstream to translate that ownership in actions and resources sometimes is a bit of a problem. An organization to support master data governance and continuous monitoring shouldn't be too big, but if it's not there, an investment in harmonization again will result into erosion of what you want to achieve. What next steps could you take to dive into this topic of master data governance combined with continuous monitoring? I've listed 3 here. A lot of it is around defining what your problem is, and for that an assessment could be a good starting point, where you have all the stakeholders involved in one room, talk about the various ideas or non-ideas or hurdles or perceived hurdles, and define what the problem is in clear words that are agreed by everybody. And doing that, then also align on ownership issues and where you want to go, what your ambition level as an organization is, and what you could handle, and in that way define a global roadmap. The second thing you could do is start engaging in discussing a framework, as I presented before, a 360-degree look at where you are in order to define action plans, projects, metrics, performance indicators, and a progress dashboard. It's a somewhat more extensive step, but will give you the clear and trustworthy foundation for a successful implementation rollout, and it will force you to think about staying clean from the beginning. And last but not least, what you could do is doing some tests to see how good or how bad the quality of your master data is in reality. And I'm not meaning from a data dictionary point of view, but from an operational transaction point of view. What happens in real life with your master data and how many exceptions are there? And if you will find out if finding those exceptions will create business value for your organization. If the exceptions are not big enough, then at least you know what your risk is and what your leakage in the organization is, and you might be able to accept that. But if it's bigger than you think, or in other areas that you think, you can use the actual live data to create your business case and define your best way forward. I'm finished my agenda of the things that I wanted to tell you, and I wanted to end with crediting Mr. Lao Tzu, who lived a long time ago, and he said, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, but if you teach him how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And taking this analogy a little step further, I would say that applying master data governance in your organization is like catching the fish, but applying it in combination with continuous monitoring, you have a meal for tomorrow also. I think we have 3 or 4 minutes left for questions. I will try to answer a few that came in. What is your thought of having a dedicated master data governance team? Oh, that's a good question. There are some pros and cons in there. If you have a dedicated team, it becomes a sort of staff organization that is sometimes looked upon like the police by stakeholders not very close to the core business. So that can be a backdrop. Having said that, you need some people to do the coordinating work. What I would go for is a clear definition of the ownership for the topic. For instance, the global process owner, or in cases where it's more appropriate, the CFO, or even a COO, and have what I would call a data board where all the stakeholders are in, talking to this owner, and then have a very small supporting group for coordination activities and managing projects around it. I would be hesitant to create yet another dedicated organization. I think there will be more resistance to that than doing it as a joint activity. And as I said, data quality should be everybody's concern. Hopefully I answered that to satisfaction. Then the question, how long will an assessment, as you suggest, take or should take? Well, not too long. I think the essence of an assessment is to get the right people in the same room so they have agreement on the topic and then can decide what they do with it afterwards. So I would really do that as a time box, and because we're mostly of the time talking senior people here, agendas will be the most conflicting element in that. But in duration, an assessment of that should not take longer than 3 to 4 weeks, and then you could come up with a sensible set of elements that you can talk further and discuss further offline or get back to in the next meeting. So short and sweet, time boxed, focus on the right people and the right agenda, what the results should be, and that is common opinions, common thoughts, and a common roadmap. Okay, I think I consumed my 45 minutes. I hope you found the webinar interesting enough, and if you have any questions that I haven't answered, and I've seen a few already coming in, I will answer them by email to you very shortly. I thank you for your time and wish you a fun, wonderful remaining part of this day. Bye-bye.